Welcome to the Women of Distance podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Kramer. These are the stories of motivated women chasing big dreams in the distance running world. You'll hear from women who are crushing it on the trails, the track, and the roads. These are not just the stories of results from the top of the sport, but the full story of how she got there, the challenges, failures, successes, lessons, and life between the miles. Before we begin, I want to be sure to thank Open Fuel for supporting the Women of Distance podcast. Stay tuned during this episode and check out the show notes to learn more about their responsible sports nutrition products, company ethos, and why it's worth your time to check out what they're making. Another quick thank you to Summit Roasters for supporting the Women of Distance project. Good coffee, roasted fresh in my hometown. Find their website in the show notes along with a special discount code to help support them and the podcast. We'd love to see Women of Distance listeners supporting those supporting us. Without further ado, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy. Okay, I am hanging out with Dani Moreno, champion of the 2026 Broken Arrow 46K. Dani, thanks for being here. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's nice to see you again. We met each other at TrailCon, I believe, like on the second day. But yeah,
Yeah.
excited to be here.
Yeah, shortly after. I am really excited to chat. I feel like I've been wanting to reach out about recording with you for a long time, and this kind of seemed like a perfect reason. For those who are not familiar, I think Broken Arrow was a significant race for you. You are coming back from injury and had a very successful race out there. I'm excited to talk about that. I'm also excited to dig into that comeback. I think we can call it a comeback now, right?
Yes.
um, but before we get there, I also wanted to go back and learn more about you and about your history. I think probably a lot of people listening to this podcast are familiar with Dani, the professional trail runner. And I kind of want to go back to how you got there and where you started in sport, in life, and athletics in general. So that'll be my first question. Where did athletics of any kind first enter your life?
Yeah, I would say it entered my life at a pretty young age. Most of my life I was one of four, and then later on we had my littlest brother Aiden. And so I think just naturally playing in the backyard with my siblings and playing with our neighbors. But where I grew up in Downey, California, it's in Southern California, soccer was like the big sport. And so as soon as I could play soccer, I was in it. And as I grew older, it became a little bit more competition-ish focused. Like, it definitely was always about, like, having a good time, but, I started doing club sports and then school, teams in, middle school, and so I would say that's where, like, my organized athletics really started to come about.
What position did you play?
I played right wing, and, as I got older in high school, I was center, and right wing.
Okay, so lots of running involved with ball
Lots of
skills at the
running,
same
yeah.
time.
Yeah, and it was interesting because, like, at one point in my life, it was right before high school, I was playing on at some points, like, the middle school team, an ASO team, which is AYSO, and a club team at the same time, and so I'd have these big weekends where I would play, like, 4 to 6 soccer games, and God bless my parents for driving me to all these places over Southern California, but I would play center for 2 of the teams, and, I guess the middle school team was midweek, so I'd play center, on a Wednesday, and then on the weekend, I'd play 2 different teams where I'd be center, and then right wing for the club, and so it's just, like, constant running, the entire week. It was pretty crazy now looking back on it.
Yeah, you are an ultra runner and you didn't even know it.
Yep.
In some ways. So elaborate on that piece a little bit. Where did running as its own sport enter the picture for you?
Yeah, it kind of started to enter, I would say, in middle school to a certain extent because each week we would do, I mean, I don't know, I'd have to go back and actually measure it, but it was like a half mile every week and a mile every month, which I think is actually quite good for that age. Like if I had a kid that was interested in running, it's just enough and not too much. And that I just would try to get faster each week and, try to beat the boys and, suddenly try and beat the boys in my grade, try and beat everyone in the whole school. And my PE coach at the time, she told my parents, she's like, hey, my daughter ran at Pepperdine. I think you should consider like putting your daughter in track and field because she's got something. And so my dad started to coach me a little bit. And I should say also, like, starting in 6th grade, there was like an organized track and field season. And so I'd like run the mile for that, but I was never like focused on it
Mhm.
until going into my 8th grade year. My dad sought out, or he started coaching me. And so that year I went to like the Junior Olympics for track and field. And then in high school, it started to become a little bit more serious with the high school program and California being such a track and field heavy state.
It sounds like you obviously had a knack for it and an interest in it, and that competitive drive maybe just helped to fuel a skill that was already underneath the surface. Where's that competitive drive come from to want to get better each time you ran and beat the boys and beat everybody in the school? And where does that come from?
Um, my parents would say I was definitely born with it. Like I was born with like a desire to progress. As I get older, though, my mom is extremely competitive, so I think it was something that I got from my mom. Because my dad was pretty endurance equipped. Like he did like some semi-professional triathlete and like cycling like in the Southern California area. And my mom was always like, she ran through almost the entire pregnancy with me. Like she was a big runner. And so, yeah, it was probably something that they both kind of like secretly had. But for them, I mean, this is also at a point where like women's athletics was still kind of like in its infancy in the big scheme of things. Like, especially for my
Mhm.
mom, like she was competitive, but she didn't know like where to put that sort of effort, especially with like her upbringing and stuff. And so I think having a daughter that was like wanting to like go after goals and stuff was something that they were kind of figuring out and kind of sourcing from community members, like how do we attack this? And I mean, I'm just really thankful for them for that, for like trying to figure that out. I do have like one really cute story. After my PE coach like told my parents this, my mom took me out on a run and she said that I just like kept talking the whole time. So she would like send me to like a lamp post, be like, run to that and back. And then I'd come back and like keep talking, like da 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 this time of day. And she's like, okay, now run to the next lamp post and back. And then she got home and she went to my dad and she was like, you need to take her out for a run. He's like, you just took her out for a run. She's like, you need to take her out for a run. So then my dad took me out for the run, and like the same thing was happening where I was talking his ear off. And then that's when they decided they were going to like do something about it.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a fun story. So where coming into high school, realizing like you really do have a talent for this and it seems like you were enjoying it at the same time, where did that transition from soccer into running and maybe making more running a more organized competitive sport for yourself? Where did that happen?
Yeah, it was a tough thing to navigate because soccer was just like what I knew and I loved soccer. I did notice that I had like this internal frustration because like at that point I had been on so many teams, like through ASO. Club was like more or less the same girls, but then high school, girls would graduate, new girls would come in and stuff. And so, or sorry, middle school going into high school. But my freshman year, I got a lot of letters for running, and soccer was something I was really passionate, and I got like a couple of letters of interest, but like running, it was really blowing my mind. All of the big schools were like, "Hi, keeping an eye on you. Let us know when you're ready." Because I had a pretty good freshman year for like that period of time, and that kind of opened my eyes. I was like, "Oh, this is something that can like pay for my school." Um, but then going into sophomore year running, I was really struggling with it because I started to go through puberty, whereas soccer was more or less still the same. Like I still had my skill set, and it wasn't like me gaining weight and being uncomfortable with my body was affecting my soccer as much as it was my running. And so then I was like, oh, maybe I should stick with soccer. Like running's not going great. Um, and then going into my junior year, puberty like was kind of like the toughest parts were behind me. And again, running was starting to pick up. And then that's when you're like really allowed to like start talking to schools and stuff. It's not just like the initial letters like, hi, we're interested in you. And that's when I made like the tough decision my senior year to not play soccer and to go all in on running. Um, and looking back, I'm like, that was a pretty intense decision for a high schooler. Like, I don't think I needed to do that. But in the moment, again, just having like this hyper fixation on progress, I was like, but this is what will get me to college. And yeah, it ended up working out because I did end up running in the university level.
I think that's a really important story to share and also fascinating to note the difference there between different sports and how your skills translated and stayed with you during that phase in high school. But there is that period of transitioning through puberty. And I think it's so important to hear like, that doesn't need to be feared. It's a transition, right? And if you're patient and you're able to stick with it, keep working through it instead of fighting it, it comes out in a positive way on the other side or as you move through. Um, Talk about the end of high school, senior year. What kind of opportunities did you have for collegiate running and academics?
Yeah, so like that cross country season went really well. And so that's where I probably got I mean, that's if you're a runner, like that's when you're starting to do like your visits and stuff like that. You can have a breakout track season, but it's a little late. Um and yeah, so cross country went well. Track was like so-so, but that was a really interesting time to kind of weigh the pros and cons of each college that I was interested in, like trying to navigate if I wanted to stay close to home or move away. I decided I wanted to be away. If I, being a California girl, like I admittedly didn't look at out of state schools just because of like tuition costs of like out of state schools and um, I was a little scared to like move out of state because I loved California and weighing the pros and cons of like a UC school versus a Cal State school and also just like this overwhelming like pressure to feel like I had to pick what I wanted to do because the majors were kind of different at each school. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, with the help of like my career counselor at the time and my parents and then also just going and visiting on these official visits, which I thought were pretty fun. I ended up deciding on UC Santa Barbara. Um, and yeah, I absolutely loved it there. Like I wanted to be at the beach. The majors were a little bit more like general, I would say. So I felt like I had a little bit more wiggle room as like the years went on. But yeah, it was a hard process. I had actually this is one of those like tough moments that I can see why my parents were so mad at me at the time. But I had verbally committed to one school and then I was getting like so anxious about it that I actually unverbaled to that school and then committed to another school. And I'm
Yeah.
happy I did make that change, but it was like one of those things where I'm like, wow, this is a lot of like pressures and inputs for like a 16, 17-year-old to like go through. Yeah.
Yeah. It really is. And that transition, too. This is always an interesting question I have the high school to college transition, not only as an athlete, but also as a human. You're, like you said, moving away and wanting to kind of get out on your own and experience something new, something different. What was that transition like for you, both as an athlete and as a young woman?
It was really hard because I grew up in a household that like respectively had a lot of rules. And so to suddenly like be on my own, kind of making my own rules was both invigorating and stressful to like navigate. And yeah, I had been like a very good student in high school. But also like my schedule was so cut and clear. It's like you go to school at this time, boom, 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 practice, go home, do homework. And so trying to like create my schedule within this like very open framework was also really tough for me. And so my first quarter, I actually got really, really bad grades. And it was kind of like a shock to the system that it isn't just copy and paste from high school. Like you really need to figure it out, especially so that you don't get on like academic probation as an athlete. Um, and also, like, my program was very intense, I would say, um, in, like, what I and all the other athletes were being asked of as far as like commitment to the program. A lot of D1 programs are like that. And me being a very like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir type of girl growing up, I was like, yeah, I'll give you everything. I'll give you all my time. And I was like, oh, I also need to make time for my academics. Like, this isn't just like a breeze. So yeah, it was a big transition period.
How do you feel like you adapted to that over time? How did you figure out what the right balance was and assert that for yourself? Or did you?
Yeah, I eventually figured it out. I think the biggest thing was that I learned that I am a terrible auditory learner. Like, if someone is just talking at me, it's really difficult for me to take in information versus reading it. And so applying that to my academics was like a huge game changer for me. So instead of like, I would go to the lectures, but I would just take notes and not really listen, and then I would read everything that they said was required reading, and I actually learned more from that at times than the actual, like, sit-in lectures, and so I noticed my grades, like, started to go up once I started to adapt to that.
Mm. Talk about your athletic career through college. What were some of the things that you were learning about yourself athletically along the way?
That I at the time was like a very all in or all out person. And so freshman year was a bit tough. I like struggled with an eating disorder and had a couple of injuries that kind of spurred from that. That to me I was like, what is happening? I was never injured in high school. Um, Luckily had actually a couple teammates who like called me out on it and were because it wasn't like the team was creating the culture. That culture was coming from like some higher ups, unfortunately. And so I felt very grateful to have those girls call me out in a gentle way, but it was a call out. And so I felt like I got my stuff together, but then I like swung the entirely different way. Just like I hate to say overeating, but I was like binge eating to like be like, "Oh,
Hmm.
I'm never gonna be that small again." And so I was trying to figure out my body in that way too. Um, and so yeah, the first couple years were really tough, but even amongst those, like I still had some like pretty good results with all of that considering. Junior year went fantastic. I felt like I finally found the balance. And then my 4th and 5th years were a little up and down once again. Like I did end up getting a conference championship in the 10K. I was qualifying to first round nationals, but it never quite clicked. And I think it was because of I had made really great friendships with girls that were starting to graduate, and I just felt like I wasn't like a true member of the team anymore, to no fault
Mm.
of the team. I think it was just like my internal struggles, especially when I decided to redshirt. Like looking back, it was like lesson learned. I probably shouldn't have redshirted. I just felt like so stuck because I felt like the rest of the world, like in quotes, was moving on without me, and I didn't want to be there anymore. And so I felt like I was
Mm.
taking that to practice, which was kind of unfair for myself and my teammates. So yeah, college was a little all over the place. Like in the end, it's definitely much when I look back at it, I'm like, wow, that was a much better experience than what I was living in true time. I just like yeah, it's just young adulthood's tough. I think
Yeah.
hormones, figuring out life, just it's a lot of external factors that you're like trying to navigate at the same time. And um, yeah, I still have like really, really great friends for it, but at times it was quite tough.
Hey, folks, quick interruption to tell you a little bit more about Open Fuel. If you're not already familiar, check out their website at openfuel.co. They're on a mission to provide the quality sports nutrition you need without the trash and waste you don't. Their Ultra Fuel drink mix provides 60 grams of carbs and 500 milligrams of sodium per serving, while actually offering great taste at the same time. They have 3 flavor options. Mango Tango is my personal favorite, as well as a naked unflavored option. They also just released a new gel mix that is hands down the smoothest gel I've ever had. It takes about 60 seconds to fully mix their powder with hot water for as much gel as you'll need for your next run. Carry 3 to 4 gel servings in their branded gel flask or any size soft flask you prefer, and your nutrition is fully covered without creating or carrying any trash along the way. I genuinely love and use these products almost every day, and I'm proud to stand with the ethos behind the company. Again, check them out at openfuel.co and use code WOD for 20% off every order, every time, while supporting the podcast at the same time. Now, back to the episode. Yeah. So, maybe this is a natural next question, where did trail running begin to enter your awareness or interest, even just recreationally?
Yeah, so I graduated and I kind of like pseudo quit running. It was kind of one of those things where, I had been told like you're going to be the best that ever was at UCSB and you're going to be an all-American and none of those things happened. Um and so I felt, I don't know, this is obviously a 20-year-old female brain at the time, but I was like, "Oh, this sport burned me." Like, I gave it everything and got nothing back and just totally motivated by the wrong things, and, yeah, so I stopped running for quite a bit, and then I was an outdoor guide, in, like, the Santa Barbara area. I was a sea cave kayak guide out at the Channel Islands. I also worked with another nonprofit where we do, like, climbing, hiking, first aid, like, kayaking on rivers, canoeing on rivers. And it was during that time that like I started to just kind of like run on trails in my free time, kind of by accident. Like it started with some hikes. And then I started to figure out like I can go a little bit further. And then being in the Santa Barbara area, I learned that trail running was a thing. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try this out. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful for that time. It's like crazy to think if this like professional framework had existed at that time, my coming into the sport, I think would have been quite different, to be honest. Like if I was like, oh, I can get a contract, like that was just not on my mind at all. I'm like, oh, this is just a really fun thing to do. Um,
Mhm.
and so I just, yeah, slowly, was in the shallow end and then slowly into the deep end, just like learning as I went, like at my own pace.
I think this is cool for people to know. I was in Santa Barbara shortly before coming over to Tahoe a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't my first time there, but it was my first time as like a more adventurous trail runner type person. I didn't know that there was such an incredible trail system out there and like so close to town. You can run from town into the mountains and just get lost. It's amazing. So I think that's a really cool place to have discovered trails and all of the other activities that you involved yourself in.
I
Um,
agree. I did get lost in that system many times early on.
this was before like navigation on your watch and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Talk a little bit about like learning trail as a competitive sport, and like, is there anyone who was in your life at that time who was an example of what that was or introduced you to the competitive side of the sport?
Yeah, it's super interesting because I signed up for a trail race. I'd have to look at my ultra sign up. My years get all mixed up now. But it was kind of in the central California area. It was called the La Cuesta Trail Ranch. And the reason I think I had heard about it because the gentleman, Luis Escobar, who puts on Santa Barbara Nine Trails, which is a pretty old race in Santa Barbara. And that, funny enough, was the first race I actually learned about because I went into the running store and I'm like, I need trail shoes. I guess this is a thing. And they had this huge map of nine trails. Um, but yeah, Lewis also was putting on this race and it was a 10K. And I was like, oh, I could probably run that far on trails. And so I remember just like driving out there the night before, camping and running on this like random private ranch. And uh, like I was racing with the top guy and coming into the end, I ended up out sprinting him. And I was like, oh, that was a little bit of a competitive fire that I haven't felt in a while. And so I thought that was quite fun. And so over the course of like, I think that year I was signing up for local-ish races, not really knowing what the competitive scene was. But to be honest, I really didn't have a mentor. It truly was me like figuring it out. I'm like trying to think. There was one woman, maybe a couple of older women in Santa Barbara who ran trails, but it wasn't like they were seeking out races. They were just running them quite well. And I called them like my trail aunties or like trail grandmothers or something because I would just like run with them and their life. Like I was like a young 20 something and they were like in their 50s, late 40s. And like just listening to what was going on in their life always just blew my mind. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's crazy. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of why as I've gotten older, whenever a younger athlete wants help, like, I'm just there because I don't know, it would have been nice to have somebody. Yeah.
Some focus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of a question I had for you. You, at this point of your career, have done like a little bit of everything from sky running to Golden Trail to UTMB and 100K now distances. What how did you begin to immerse yourself into the elite end of the sport and really start to test yourself in bigger competition and figure out sort of how you measured up and what you were looking for from the sport?
Yeah, I think it was so eventually I did end up like seeking there was a couple of nexus that were happening at the same time. It was one, I won this race in San Francisco called the Marin Ultra 25K because there was some prize money for something called the La Sportiva Cup at the time.
Mhm.
And that was like my first big check that I won. And I was like, whoa, this is super cool. And at that race, I actually ended up meeting David Roche. He won the men's race, and Megan Roche was supposed to run the female race, but something happened. And so he was the first one that like brought up coaching. Like, do you have a coach? Like, that's crazy. You just did that, etc. And so that actually like spurred my thinking. I'm like, do I need a coach for this? I've just been kind of doing my own thing, like basically getting lost in Santa Barbara trails. So there was that. I acquired a coach um, and then I actually got sponsored after that race. So, Hoka reached out to me and was like, "Hey, what are you interested in?" And it's funny to think back now, but at the time I was like, "I'm going to do super long stuff. I'm going to do Nolan's 14. I'm going to do all the longest races," which is laughable because I haven't run further than a 60K years later. So they like gave me a contract, which was essentially just travel money, like nothing else. It was like shoes and travel money. And so now, it's like I've been working as a nanny and a guide, and suddenly I have like thousands of dollars to go travel the world and do this trail running thing. I'm going to get a coach. And so that's all what like kind of was like, oh, I should really try like at this. And so we started to with the help of my coach in Google, just Google races. And I did a USA championship in Bellingham, Washington, out of all places. And I got fourth, I think, fourth or fifth on the day. And that was the first race I had lost since I had like started trail running. I was like, oh, I need to like kick it up a gear. Like there's better women out there. And so yeah, I would say those were all the meeting points of like seeking out competition and like trying to figure out what races to go to. But to be honest, like the sub ultra short trail landscape at that time was still quite underdeveloped. Like there was no Golden Trail World Series. La Sportiva Cup was gone the next year. So it was really hard to figure out like what races I should do. And so the US Sky Running actually had a circuit that year under the World Skyrunning Circuit label. And so I think that's what I focused on for a little bit. Yeah.
What made you? I mean, I think at this point you are almost a figurehead of sub-hub trail running in at least in North America, if not internationally. What made you really stick with that distance or those distances for such a long time and like recognize that that was a place that you were really strong and passionate, I think too.
Yeah, I would say it was partially I enjoyed the challenge of trying to run fast on trail. Um, and also just still working a lot, like it's what I could manage from like a time standpoint. And then also my coach at the time probably had a large influence on me because I was still quite like impressionable. And so he had really recommended that like I try and get the best out of myself out of these short distances as long as I could before moving up because it would only like help me with, starting to do more duration and time on feet.
Gotcha. I don't want to skate over any story, but I also want to make sure we get to more recent
Yeah.
events too. Let's skate forward just a little bit. Where did Adidas enter the picture for you, and how did that transform what maybe sponsorship looked like for you, or what the sport looked like for you, and how it incorporated into your life?
Yeah, so that from that first Hoka contract to Adidas, I think I ended up being with Hoka for like 6 years, I wanna say.
Oh, wow.
Um, Again, like, they sponsored me quite early on. I don't think I would be getting that sponsorship in today's standards. Um, but Adidas came into the picture after 2022. I had quite a big year. I had done the Golden Trail World Series circuit. I think that was my second or third year doing it. And shout out to that circuit. I would not have been able to afford it, but at the time, the circuit would pay for you to go to another race if you were in the top 10. So I was like constantly incentivized to be in the top 10 overall, and then they'd pay for you to go to the next place. I wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. But by doing that, I got international experience. So going into 2022, I did a Mont Blanc Marathon where I got third. And then I turned it around at OCC and got third and was the first American to ever podium in that race. And so after those two performances back to back, I had like a couple of different offers and ultimately chose Adidas because at that time, I really was wanting to be part of a team. I with Hoka, at that time, the team atmosphere was kind of like every person, not like for themselves, but you're kind of managing yourself. Like you get yourself to places and stuff like that, where Adidas already had a few years of like, we do team houses and we do like this team thing. And so, yeah, that was just like really speaking to my ethos.
Yeah, I think they were one of the very early adopters of that, and I think other
Yeah.
other brands have sort of followed suit at this point, but that was early on, many years ago. Um, Talk a little bit then, I think, with them coming into the picture in 2022, I think you can sort of see how things evolved for you from there. And again, I'm fast forwarding a little bit here, but coming into 2024, you just had a banger of a year. Like, I feel like you were just it seemed like you were really having fun, also seemed like you were really hitting things out of the park every time that you lined up to race. Um, so fast forwarding a little bit, you came back to OCC that year in 2024. Tell us a little bit about that experience and that race and like sort of how that kicked off the phase that you are now living through and coming through the other side of.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, 20 to help provide context for 24, yeah, signed going into 23 with Adidas. Um, had a couple of good races. I did like Boston Marathon, Eiger, and then I did OCC, but I got sick, so I had to drop out. That was like
That's right. Okay.
catastrophic for me. Like looking back, I think every athlete, their first DNF feels so doomsday, and I really empathize with that. But now, having lived the years that I've lived, I've like that's DNFs are hard, but they just happen. But coming off the third, like the goal the following year, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try and win this thing. And the whole preparation was like, I'm here to win. I'm here to win. So then getting sick a couple days out and like not even like being in the competition from the first minute because basically I had a stomach bug. Things were coming out of all ends. I had no energy. Um, but then I think I ended up getting second at a Golden Trail World Series race after that, which I was like, okay, I am fit. Like I was as fit as I thought I was. And then did Kodiak, got first place there. Roll into 2024, first at Canyons. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do OCC again. The goal is to win. Like, we're going to run it back. Um, and then kind of had a little bit of a lull. Like, I was just really tired. We were trying to like push levers we hadn't pushed before. I was ignoring signs of fatigue, just being like really cranky, tired all the time, like going out to runs and just not wanting to run, which now again, hindsight's 2020. Um, but line up for OCC, kind of like take it out a little hot and then just like hit a wall. And I was just like, what is going on? Like, I am so tired. we get through the second half of the race, and like I have this ability to really send the last downhill of races. I just shut my brain off and I just let my legs do the work. So I'm like, okay, I am in sixth place right now. If you run the fastest split anyone has ever run down La Flégère, you could maybe catch third. And so I was in the process of doing that. And about 3K from the finish, I like run through some water and my ankle rolls on itself because it got a little too slippery, and it just felt terrible. I like fall into the trees, and it was just like one of those moments that felt fast. And so I'm like, I am going to drop out of OCC with 3K to go. This is crazy. I am in so much pain. What just happened, Dani? And then one of the women I had passed on the downhill, because I was starting to catch people, she starts coming into frame, and I'm like, okay, let's go. So I like pull myself out, like using the trees. I like take the first steps, and I'm like, my ankle has no give, and I finish the race. And after I learned that I had fractured my cuboid, tore my peroneus longus, and in the process of tearing that tendon, which is on the outside of your ankle, it like ripped part of the cuboid off too. So it was like fractured and the sheath was off. And so I just finished this race, and I was just like, dude, what just happened? So that was pretty tough. So that was end of 2024, and that was something I had to manage all the way till February 2025, like trying to get back. And so with Broken Arrow, that was last year's Broken Arrow, which is kind of confusing for people. Trust me, I get confused too, because I've been hearing like different reports and stuff, and it's super confusing because they're like, she was injured coming into last year's Broken Arrow, and she's also injured coming into this year's Broken Arrow. Yes, that is not a typo. That actually happened. Yeah.
Yeah. This is an unfair question, I think, probably. Reflecting back on OCC and finishing those last 3K of the race, if you were to go back to that moment, would you have dropped out or would you have still finished the race? Do you think that played any role in the injury, in the damage that was done?
No, I think the damage was
Yeah.
already done. I think it was just like at that point, pure adrenaline. And like the like it going under me, like I never want to relive that again, because it was like I heard it, I felt it, like that was the moment that it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. In that recovery process, talk a little bit about, I mean, this is your first substantial injury ever. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely as a trail runner. Talk about just the process of that, both in terms of actually healing all of this damage that was done, and also how you handled that mentally, kind of coming off of a big spring, having this little bit of a lull leading up to OCC, and then it ending the year ending the way that it did.
Yeah, it was interesting because at first it was easier than I thought it would be. But again, I think that speaks to I was just really tired. Like I had overcooked
Yeah.
myself, and I was like, "Oh, finally, I get a break." And, the reality at that moment was like, "Oh, I'm going to be in a boot for 6 weeks and then I'll get back to it. I'll probably be able to race in January or February." When it got hard was when I got out of the boot and then realized that it wasn't fully healed, because I think just the script I had been told that like, oh, 6 weeks and you're back to it, was now not incorrect, but it had shifted. And I had tried to start the process, and then in the process, got more imaging. It's like, oh, this actually needs a lot more time. And that was a bit more difficult for me, because I'm like, oh, now it's suddenly from a month and a half, 3 months. And the lasting like injury per se that took the most long was I was very traumatized on downhills. Like I was really scared to run down stuff that I had normally just pranced down, from this thought, like it would regularly repeat in my head that feeling of the ankle going under and just not trusting it. And I did actually end up rolling it again like that following April, which like did a number on me mentally again, because I was just starting to get my confidence back. And yeah, it was really difficult also just having had not been there before, um, I lost a lot of the confidence that I had been kind of building, between 21 and 23 of like, "Oh, I'm one of the best in the world at this. I can compete with anybody." Suddenly that had been like extremely depleted. It's like, I can't even run downhill. And this is my like the thing that I love, but also my job. And this is like half the job is running downhill. And so I would say the most work going into Broken Arrow 2025, which that year, which is last year, was a Team USA selection race. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to run with anybody. Like this is like I was already beating myself up before I got to the start line. Which is why when the day ended up unfolding as it did, it ended up being like the most like mental builder out of that entire comeback was the actual race itself.
Did it surprise you then that you were I mean, I think I can even remember your reflections that you shared about it, feeling maybe surprised that you were able to compete in the way that you did off of history and what you had built for yourself over time. Do you feel that way? Like it was a surprise that you were able to finish on the podium coming back from a substantial injury?
Yes, in the moment, yes, I was just, like, flabbergasted. I had made a coaching change during the injury process. I felt like it was time. Um, and so I was just being coached in a different way. It was a lot of different changes, and I was stuck in the trap of being like, "You have to run this amount to be great."
Mhm.
You have to put in this much time on feet, like this much vert, etc. And that entire block just being like held back more than I ever had before. I'm like, there's no way I can compete with the Jen Lichters or the Helena Faulkners or the Grayson Murphys. Like, there's just no way. And like, I remember the morning of that race, I told my team manager, I was like, hey, I'm aiming for top 5. Like, that would be a huge day for me today. And I still believe like that was a great field. Like, top 5 was a great field, all the way top 10. And she's like, okay, we'll just see how the day goes. And I'm like, okay, just don't worry if I'm far back. Like, I'll do what I can. And then obviously like coming through the first lap, I think I was in 4th or something like that. I was like, oh, and I actually feel pretty good. Um, but yeah, that's all to say. I was very surprised in the moment, but then months late or a month later when I was like really picking it apart, I was like, you really shouldn't have been surprised. You have years and years of experience. You're a really good like race tactician. And yeah, I think that's where, the confidence started to come back, but then I broke my toe. And then that has led to this whole second chapter stuff.
So, elaborate on this a little bit. I think it's interesting to hear you speak to that and maybe needing to sort of give yourself some proof that that confidence is deserved. And then if I am correct, you qualified for the world's team, but you gave up your spot because you were focused on CCC for the summer. Talk a little bit then about that process, that decision, and where what happened to your toe?
Yeah, I knew pretty early on I probably wouldn't accept the Team USA spot just because of the timing. Also, the course like looked quite demanding for where I was like in my comeback journey. It's like I had already kind of worked through this downhill trauma and felt like it was in a good place, but I heard the course was like extremely technical. And I was like, wow, that's another big mental leap for me to take at this point. Like, I'd rather give it to someone who's like really excited about the course, will thrive on it. And it couldn't have gone to anyone better than Jane Moss and Ruby Lindquist, who are like just technical badasses. And so I felt really good about that, and Grayson Murphy. Um, and so yeah, the shift focused to CCC, and so I go off Broken Arrow, have this big emotional moment, give away my team spot, feel very like, okay, we're finally like a marble in a groove again. Like, it's been a lot of work to get here. And then 2.5 weeks later, I break my toe. And I was
Two and a
like,
half weeks.
yes, it was July 17th. I'll never forget
Wow.
the day. So yeah, almost 3 weeks, but it was like, yeah, 2.5 weeks. And I just like, I remember it happening, calling my husband. I was like, I think I just broke my toe. He's like, let's not like worry too much. Let's see how it looks tomorrow. I was like, I don't know, man. That's did not sound good. I just hit on a door jam. And yeah, sure enough, I'd broken my toe, and I was just like, okay, time to apply all the lessons that we've learned from this last chapter. And yeah, it was a really tough thing because I like biked for a few weeks and tried to like just get as much information as I could from people who had also broken their toes. And more often than not, people just run through it, and
Hmm.
it hurts for a bit, but eventually gets better, is what I was told. And then a couple of people were like, "You should just boot it," and I was just like, "Oh, I've worked so hard to get here. Like, why would I go back to what I was just doing? That would probably take me out of CCC." And yeah, it was a really, really tough time. Eventually, like, convinced myself to work through it. In the preparation for CCC, the toe was getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Line up on the day. As soon as we start, I was just in so much pain. I think, well, now I know, like, it just being, if it was road running, I probably could have gotten away with it because whenever I ran flat, it was fine. But like just the high flexion point of anything above 10% grade, I was just in so much pain. Drop out. Sorry, it's a long injury saga. Drop out, tried to like convince myself it was okay, like post the race, eventually go back to the doctor. He images it and he's like, it is completely fractured now. I was like, okay, what are my options? He's like, well, you could try to throw the kitchen sink at it, like as in PRP, hyperbaric, like hydrolonic acid, like all these like different shots you can do, and you can try to boot it and hope that it fixes. Or we could try surgery, which will take more time, but like one is like not a 50, it's like 60-40 chance it'll work out, the first one. Or the second one is like closer to 70-80, but toes are really hard, like because they're so far from your heart. And so, I don't know, in the moment, I was like, okay, give me like a couple hours. And then I call the doctor back. I was like, okay, I want to do surgery. When's the soonest I could do it? And he's like, you could do it in 2 days. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And so just kind of like uprooted everything and got the surgery. And that was then the next injury that I dealt with. Yeah.
So, talk about this process a little bit. I think a single injury, the first injury, is something that most runners face and deal with at some point in their life. And not to minimize it, it's hard, it's always hard. And then, sort of as you described, you get back into your normal routine and life moves forward and things are good. I think when you then have a second one, especially so shortly after, it changes you in a way, maybe. Talk about how you dealt with this. This is a really broad question, so I'll break it down more as we go. But from a physical standpoint, you've shared a lot about this too, I think, in terms of the way that you treated it, the way you sort of surrendered your path back to running to focus on what you needed right now. You also talked a lot about nutrition and how you handled that. Let me stop the question there, and then we'll get into the mental side of and emotional side of it.
And so, I'm sorry, what's the question?
Okay. How did you manage the physical side of the recovery of this, both in terms of like allowing yourself to detach from setting a timeline and a date that you had to be back to running? And also, like, how did nutrition play into this picture of healing an injury while you were not running or training in a traditional sense?
Yeah, it was interesting because the first injury, the cuboid injury, I felt like this almost like I took a couple weeks off after it, but I felt this desperation to like hold on to my fitness a bit. And so as soon as I was cleared to do anything, it was like usually in steps like you're cleared to swim with a buoy in your legs, you're swim to bike. I would almost go like within the 24 hours. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go bike. Now I'm going to go do these things because I need to like hold on to this fitness. And while it did end up working out, like it was quite tiring at times, like during the healing process. And so when the surgery happened, I had like a pin in my toe. And so for sure, I wasn't allowed to do much until the skin around the pin closed to like avoid infection. And when the scar where they like cut open my heel and the inside of my toe, because essentially they like scraped part of my heel, opened up the inside of my toe, stuck it in there, and like shish kebabbed it all together. So I needed all the openings to close to avoid infection. But after that, he was like, you could try the arm bike. You could try like a sitting ski erg. And I don't know, just something about it this time. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take completely time off. It just what sounds right to me. I feel like it's not just this injury, it's everything that led into this injury as well. And the other difference too, which I like give myself a pat on the back for even making that decision, is the cuboid. I went in, even though I was tired, in extremely fit shape. Whereas this one, like I was still building up. Like I'd never reached like in quotes, a normal mileage, but I never reached like even half of the mileage I was doing before. And so that kind of sucked too. I was like, I'm not even super fit, which is like a weird way of thinking now that I look back at it. But yeah, I, after all was said and done, I think I just had made this promise with myself and also just working with psychologists of like, I just need to trust my gut more. Because when my toe broke, my initial gut was, I should not race ECC. But being like the information gatherer I have always been and am, I gathered all this information and convinced myself that I'd be able to pull it off. And so when this happened, I was like, I'm just going to trust my gut. I think I should take time completely off. I'm just going to take time completely off. And like fitness, you just have to let go of the notion of it. Like you're going to have to build back regardless. And so why not just take this time to like focus on that? Enter nutrition. Kyla Chanel, who owns Nutritional Revolution, also leaning heavily on her that she is the professional in this space and just like really leaning into all the healing nutrients. Like we got a lot of blood panels while I was completely out to make sure everything was balanced and working well. And a lot of it, I would say to sum it up is like eat more than you would think. Like the body is healing. Like you need to give it the ingredients to heal. Whereas I think some people are like, oh, I'm sedentary, I don't need as much food, when it's actually the opposite. Yeah.
I think that's really important to hear and also really hard to do to when you are sedentary and you're not used to being a sedentary person to make those adjustments and to know how to make those adjustments for yourself. Um, Talk about the way that you handled some of this from a mental emotional perspective and taking that full stop. I said a few minutes ago, like you are very central in the trail running community, very active in the trail running community, not just as an athlete. Do you feel like it was helpful, hurtful, hard for you to still show up and be present in the sport without being a competitor at the moment?
100%. Yeah. I think, again, just like shout out to mental professionals like my normal psychologist and the sports psych, and just helping me to realize that. And I think this is probably one of the biggest things I've learned through injury is that life is not binary. It can't be binary. It is gray all the way around. And like recognizing that it's okay to like you have space for both. Like I was extremely happy for my friends that continued to be okay. Especially the ones that like had a few injuries as well and were starting to run again. At times I was like, oh man, like I wish I could run too. But I was like, wow, how good for them. Like that is so cool that they're through it. Like this shit sucks. And then also like I have this thing called a brick. And so I just would have to like brick myself for like weeks at a time. And when I felt ready to engage, you know, I would. Or when I felt ready to share something, I would. But I didn't want to like shame myself if I felt like keeping to myself and like keeping, I call it kind of like my inner circle, because it's like I have friends all over the world, and you know, grateful for technology for them to call and FaceTime. But there's very few individuals that are with you like on a daily basis. And so really making space and time for those people was like my number one priority, because they were seeing all of the shades, not just the like, okay, I'm ready to call you back because I don't feel like crying today. And yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
I think, and this was sort of part of our conversation in Tahoe, was the amount that you did share at the time that you were sharing it, I think is really valuable to your audience and people as a whole, that you weren't waiting until it was over to look back at it in hindsight, but you did periodically share while you were in it and while you were going through it. And hearing you talk about uh, taking some comfort in seeing friends who had been injured making that progress and making their own comeback. And while it's hard to sit and watch it, still feeling rewarded by that. I think a lot of what you shared did the same for a broader audience, and just knowing this shit is hard and like professional athletes go through this too. And just being able and being comfortable to display the hard while you were in it, I think is really meaningful and really powerful. And I think even while you were sort of protecting yourself from the larger bubble and sphere around you, what you did share was really important. And I think you should take a lot of um, pride in that. What do you feel like you have learned and discovered about yourself through this process?
Thank you, by the way. Those were
Yeah.
some of my favorite conversations at TrailCon, was people talking about like my Substack and stuff like that. Yeah, I've learned a lot. I've learned to be way more adaptable with things. I've learned to be grateful for things like being able to line up at a race line healthy. Um, and being grateful to be able to like push my body again. I think when I was injured, that was like one of the most difficult things, was coming to terms with that. Like a lot of my mental health was largely centered on physical activity and like being able to move my body and stuff like that, and trying to get more creative with other outlets of just feeling balanced. Um but yeah, like even before Broken Arrow, I think like 5 or 6 weeks before, I had a really bad ankle roll. And like in the moment, I had like a little cry for a second, but I was so amazed with how quickly I put myself back together, in the sense of like, this is okay. We're just going to bike and we'll just take it day by day. And even just a year ago, it would have felt a lot more doomsday, kind of like the version of myself that had carried, a lot through college and post college, just like how to handle with basically like hard moments. I think just being so rooted in perfectionism and progress, like every time something didn't go according to plan, it was like really difficult for my head to wrap around. It's like, well, this can't happen to me. I prepared. I checked all the boxes. And yeah, just through these two injuries, it's like life just happens. And it's sometimes like just really bad accidents, like freak accidents, which all of these injuries have been freak accidents, where it's like, I can't point to one thing and it be like, oh, it was this. It's like, no, life is complicated. It's gray and it's just going to happen to you. And so I just feel a lot more even keeled in that. And yeah, just not taking things for granted. I would say those are probably the biggest things.
I think I'm sorry that you had to go through it, but I think it's also very cool to see the way that it's like fundamentally changed you. Kind of like we were saying, like everybody has had an injury or will if they haven't already. And it's very easy when you are healthy again to sort of move forward and forget. But when you've had something deeper and more profound that you've had to face and had to deal with, it lingers. It sticks with you in ways that I think are healthy and beneficial and will really translate to something new and different as you move forward. Um,
I would
so I
agree with
really
that
would,
too.
yeah,
It's like
I really,
I've said that to a couple people too. I'm like, I don't like people struggling, where it's like, I don't wish that upon anybody. It sucks. It's dark, it's sad, and it's really, really hard. But when you get through it, you're like, oh, this is what life is about. It's like getting through this stuff.
yeah, yeah. I really want to talk about Broken Arrow 2026. So, and I don't want to take too much of your time doing
You're
it,
good.
but
You're good.
I'm eager to hear just being able to come back to racing and having all of this new perspective and change in the way you were thinking, processing, and addressing things. Let's start with maybe like where did you decide that you were going to stand on the start line of Broken Arrow this year?
Yeah, I actually had to make the decision very early. I had to make it in, well, early-ish, like February, March. Just different obligations being a professional. It was like, okay, where am I going to start my season to where it kind of makes sense from like all the things involved in being a professional. And it was a really hard decision at first. I had to really work through it mentally because I was so stuck on this notion that I was in a washing machine, that life had like thrown me back into the washing machine. And I was like, okay, here I am injured, trying to get ready for June 20 something again. And as time went on, again, kind of like just working within myself and with the sports psych and stuff, just like really working to be like, life is not copy and paste. This is a completely different situation. It is, you are not the same person. It is not the same race. There's no way you can have the same race back to back. Different racers, different weather, different set of circumstances. Like, by definition, this is not the same race. And so once like I accepted that, I felt like in a very much better place mentally. And this time I could feel the confidence rebuilding much faster. I was like, I just need to get to the start line. That's all I need to do. Because last time, my experience and my love for racing is what ultimately took over. And like, it's almost like it was a confidence giver. I was like, it's going to happen again. That doesn't just go away. And I'm always going to have this competitive fire even from taking a hiatus from running, like me wanting to out sprint the first place male. That's just like, it's in me. It's always been in me. And so I just started to get really excited about that notion. I was like, you don't even need to practice this. Like, you've lived it for like 33 years of your life now. Just get to the line. And also having the experience of the previous Broken Arrow of like not having run that much before it, I was like, we just need to run. We don't even need to run the most you've ever run. And so, yeah. And also immediately like my co-host MK Sullivan was signed up for the race too. And like really every time we chatted, I was like, MK, you just got to trust it. Like, it's going to be okay. And sadly she didn't get to start, but hearing myself out loud, I'm like, what you tell other people out loud is what you need to tell yourself too. Like, you need to actually believe it. And so we got to the start line, and there was a whole mixed match of like things that happened even before the start line that all pointed like a previous Dani was like, oh, this is not going to be a good day. Like, nothing is in your favor. Down to like 2 minutes before the start, I was even wearing the wrong pair of shoes, and I like ran to my car, switched them, put them on, and I was like, okay, we're still here. But yeah, it was just like, I was just so happy to be there and be in the space, taking it all in. And it just was a cherry on top that it also, when we came out of the tree, so Broken Arrow, like the first 4 miles are runnable. They're still quite tough, but in trail running world, we call them runnable. And then it's a quite steep pitch. And that first steep pitch, I was like, oh, today's a good day. Because I was climbing really well. And I was really excited to race Rachel. Her and I have raced each other for years. We kind of entered the sport at the same time. And so, at least for myself, and I think she definitely feels the same, we just have like a deeply ingrained respect for each other because we're still here. We're still getting after it. And it was really fun, like battling with her for that whole like first portion. And then the rest of the day, I just followed my heart, literally, like my heart rate. And it was really cool. Just, I think at the top of the climb, halfway through the climb, once I made the move on her, I was like, I'm going to win today. I can just feel it. Like, anything anyone throws at me, I am ready to respond, but just race your race. And so that's what happened, which was cool.
That's a very brief summary of like a really big day.
Yeah.
But I think it's fun to hear. The last interview I did was with Sarah, who was
Oh, she
second
had a
in the
great
same
day.
race.
Yeah.
So she described the second loop, and she was catching people through that second loop and said she just never saw you again. You were gone. So elaborate a little bit maybe on that second loop and when you knew you were having a day, what were some of the feelings and thoughts and processes going through your head while you were in it?
Yeah, coming through the first loop, I heard I had a minute lead, which at the top of the climb, Broken Arrow, you could chunk it up into 4 runnable miles, steep climb, steep down, kick out of Shirley Canyon, steep down. And so going through the loop, I heard I had a minute, whereas at the halfway point of the top climb, I had heard I had 30 seconds, and I was like, oh, that's actually really good because I didn't feel like I was pushing the downhill. I just felt very within myself, and I was like, okay, this is good. And then I heard as I was leaving the aid station, the other women kind of coming in, like you could hear the cheers and stuff. And I was like, okay, we're going to run as much as we can for the next hour. Like really challenging myself. Don't hike, don't hike, don't hike. And when we got then to the next aid station, I always forget what that was called, but it's Snow King, I think. It's the first aid station on each loop. I like crest over Snow King, go to the bottom, and my team manager was there, and we had someone, and this is totally loud, guys, but we had someone in the woods that like took my split, and then when the next woman came through, took the split and then told her. And so I asked my team manager, I was like, hey, what's my time? She's like, oh, you have I think she said I had like 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes, something like that, 2.5 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm doing good. I just put a minute within like the most runnable part, and we haven't even like really started climbing yet. So at that point is when like my confidence was growing, but I knew still that the women behind me were good descenders. So I was like, okay, let's try and get this lead as far as we possibly can. And at the top of the second climb, then I was told I had 4 minutes, and I was like, game over. There's very few people who could close that gap. And last year, I closed 3 minutes in the last downhill. And so in that moment, again, it was just like self-belief and self-talk. I was like, I'm betting on myself. Like, there's no one that can catch me on this downhill. Like, if I get challenged, like, I'm going to bet on myself today. And yeah, just continued all the way to the finish.
And it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool to hear you able to grasp that kind of confidence in the moment in the first race back. And like you had proven this to yourself the year before, but then to see you really execute it again in this year is the mental side of that. Being able to talk to yourself that way, I think is very powerful and very cool to see.
Thank you. I will say too, one more note is that last year's race, I remember the first lap, I ran so hesitant and conservative. And when I came through the second lap, I was like, oh, I have a lot more to give. So going into this year's race, having all the sagas that I did, I was like, I making a promise to myself, I'm never going to make that mistake again of like forgetting who I am and like how much hard work I've put into this. Like, I wish, it's always like, again, hindsight 2020, I've said that like 20 times. I wish I had had this confidence last year, and had thrown myself into the race with Jen and Helen sooner. But if I had not had that experience, I don't think this year would have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So, two more questions for you then. What just like coming across the finish line in the hours and the days that followed, what were some of the thoughts and feelings that sunk in? Not only that you got through it, but that it went so well and you came out so shiny on the other side.
Um, some of the first thoughts were, let's never forget this build, and I think it was at TrailCon. I had like a little side purse, and randomly, oh, it's gonna make me cry. um, I like pulled out this piece of paper that was like from the day that wow, sorry, I didn't realize this was gonna make me so emotional. It was like the day that I had my surgery, and it was like where to pick up my scooter, like post surgery. And I took it out and I was like, oh, this is hilarious. Like, this
Wow.
is the paper that I'm pulling out. Um, and so, yeah, I'm, speaking to like me sharing, I'm also selfishly gracious, like that I did that because I can always refer to that moment or that time. And so post the race, yeah, I was just like really, really grateful for like all my people and grateful to myself as well, just like for sticking with it. And also just feeling like I had cracked open like a new, not a new version of myself, but like next level Dani of like, okay, what if we just run the rest of our races with confidence? Like, what if we just like show up to every line being like, I don't care the work that I've put in or the work that you've put in. Like, let's just see what happens on the day. And yeah, just not taking those moments for granted. And also just like, holy shit, that actually worked.
I love that. I love all of that. What's next?
uh Next is Ragged 50K. It's the first week of August. I was really my coach, Tom Evans, who's actually racing Hard Rock this weekend, he's incredible. We like really sat down because I had like 3 different 50Ks. He's like, I know you really want to race because obviously you've only raced once this year. He's like, but let's just pick one. And I was like, yeah, I'm totally on board. I would rather be home, especially because the later half of the year is very filled with other life things that I'll just be going. Um, so anyways, I was trying to decide if I wanted to do Speed Goat or not because it's a really great 50K and there's great competition. But again, just trusting my gut, I was like, I don't want to go out to Utah. Like it would have to be like next week. It felt like too soon after all of this stuff. Um, and then so Ragged is like it's the first week of August. It's in New Hampshire, actually. So on your side of the US. And then I'll do CCC end of August.
Okay. That's very exciting and exciting to see you back in. I think that pattern seems to like go well for you that you've been there, you attempted it, and now you're circling back for uh, another go, another try. At least
Yeah.
it went well with OCC.
True. Yeah. Or Broken Arrow too. Yeah.
Broken Arrow too. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I'm excited to see it. One last question that I have for you before we wrap it up, and I'm eager to hear your answer. I feel like this whole conversation has been a lesson of things that you have learned along the way and reflection of, if I had known this then how things might have changed for you or how things are changing for you now that you have that information. If you could go back and give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would you tell her?
Life is long.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. I think everything in the moment felt like, oh, this is so doomsday. Like, yeah. I think it's just you're in it for the long haul. Um, and yeah, enjoy it.
I love that. I love it. Dani, thank you for sharing so much of yourself and your experience and your story. I really enjoyed getting to hear it more in depth this time and hearing how you're coming out the other side of things as well and what you're carrying forward from this big experience that you've had. And I enjoyed just what I learned from it too, from hearing your telling of it and what you've absorbed from it. So thank you for sharing so much of yourself. It was really good to hear and connect.
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it.
Mhm.